Scientist.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Hoof Podcast Live. As you can see, you still got me, Anthony Romeo, here, along with my co-host, Eric. But Sterling is not able to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, he's not feeling well. He had to get a COVID test today. So please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Let's hope he recovers and he's back with us as soon as he can be. But we have a special episode for you tonight, a Cover One special. As you can see down below, Eric and I, we've got Greg and Anthony, both from Cover One. You know Greg from the Wednesday preview show and the Sunday post game, and obviously Anthony from the Thursday disguised coverage. So, gentlemen, welcome to the Hoof Podcast Live. What is up?
Yeah, combined, we're almost as handsome as Sterling, so you're in good shape.
So close. We're so close so far.
You did mention it takes two people to replace Sterling.
Yeah, very
I'll
clearly.
remind him this time.
Very clearly. No, it's also we were talking pre-show, like we talk a lot and go back and forth all the time. I think it's the first time we've officially done this on air together, so I'm pretty excied.
True. We're lucky that we have Chris Brown on the show. With Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, emceeing tonight, Chris Brown.
I like it.
All right. Well, we're gonna jump right into things. You guys know how we roll here. We're gonna start with our little around the league segment here, and then we'll get into the Bills game. Obviously, not what we wanted to have, the taste in our mouth for the bye week here, but still a lot of good to talk about. A lot of things we can go on. So let's jump right into it with our first segment. What's poppin'? Again, for those of you just tuning in with us, this is our segment where we talk around the NFL. Obviously, we're a Bills-centric podcast. We'll get a lot into that, but we like to hear about what's going around the NFL too. So, gentlemen, are you ready? Are we ready to go? How are we feeling? What's the energy level right now? Is you still lingering on the loss, or are we ready to move on? How you guys doing?
I'm high energy until I start thinking about the game, and I'm like, ugh. It feels like I get kicked right in the gut, and it's 2 days later now. I'm still kind of upset, so I'll say medium energy.
Yeah, my wife, she's like a peripheral fan. She has the game on even when I'm downstairs. She'll watch it upstairs. She'll watch the Browns game, flip over to the Bills game, go back and forth. And like she keeps laughing because every time we turn the channel, someone is showing the stupid Hail Mary catch over and over and over again. And I'm like, I can't. It was on like Good Morning America. It was on like everything, like even the morning show she was watching. And she just kept looking over at me, like checking to make sure I wasn't breaking things.
Yeah,
I
usually watch, the Sports Center or something, just to catch up around the league, win or lose. You got to know what's going on. I couldn't watch any of it. I came home and I was just depressed, but I'm feeling it now. I'm really 7-3 is a good place to be. 8-2 would have felt so good. 7-3 is an okay place to be. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm all right. We spoke about it offline before we got on air, just like how much that loss was just brutal, the way to lose that way. And I think to Greg's point, and Anthony, a bit to yours, it's like the things we were talking about off air. It's the things like when you're getting it from people who don't really watch football, or you're seeing it in mediums that like don't cover. It'd be like if you put on like E! News and they were like, look at this play. And you'd be like, really? Like even here? Like, and that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm getting over it until, someone who doesn't watch sports knows I'm a Bills fan and is like, oof, tough loss on Sunday, huh? And I'm like, get out of my face.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too. I walked into work and they know that I'm hyped for the Bills game every weekend. And, one of my coworkers is like, oh, how was the game this weekend? I was just like, don't ask, it's painful, but we're going to get into it. We got a lot to talk about from that game. But we want to start with our, around the league segment here, and maybe to add some fuel to the fire. I don't know if this is a good thing, maybe in the stat line, but the Patriots came out and beat a team that everybody thought they were going to lose to this weekend. I think the Baltimore Ravens, 23-17. So just wanted to start off, get your thoughts on this game. Obviously, New England was an underdog here. They came out strong. The weather was miserable for this game. And Lamar Jackson, not exactly a highlight reel day for him. What are your guys' thoughts? Eric, let's start with you.
I don't think it was I mean, everyone was picking the Ravens, but this is the NFL. I mean, the Ravens they're going to be fine. I think they're 6-3. They're in a good position. They do play in a tough division, but this game in particular, Bill Belichick just lined up and beat the Ravens in their own game, right? 39 total rush attempts for New England and 28 for Baltimore. I mean, the Ravens got beat at their own game, and they could do no wrong. The Patriots played pretty well in this game, honestly. Mistake-free.
This was by far the biggest surprise to me the whole weekend. I actually thought this was going to be a blowout by Baltimore. It was such a matchup problem for everything that New England had struggled with and not being able to stop the run. And, even though it was shocking seeing Belichick catch 7 points at home, which we literally haven't seen in 20 years, it was really hard to be able to then see, how do you, they should have lost to the Jets. If the Jets didn't have that bungled, drive at the end of the game, you should have lost to the embarrassing team that's going to go 0-16. And now you turn around and beat the Ravens. So I think on both sides of it, it shows you the week-to-week league, any given Sunday, and that, hey, don't count Belichick out completely. Also, all the people counting Miami going on some 10-1 run to end the season, it's a week-to-week league, so don't count those chickens before they hatch. On the other side of it, I'm not all that afraid of Baltimore. They should have stomped them. And, I think, again, it's a week-to-week league, but if we catch them in the playoffs, I'm not all that scared.
Yeah, to kind of echo those same sentiments, I thought Baltimore would get the win, and I know they were coming off a weird week where it was like everybody and their mom on the team has COVID, and then nope, they're going to be okay, and everybody can come back. And I know that throws you off a little bit, but to see them come out and I know the weather was bad, and you can't underestimate Belichick and so on and so forth, but the Patriots had injuries. The Patriots came into this game limping, and Baltimore just has so much talent everywhere on the ball, especially on the defensive side. And to see them get – I know the bigger take is Lamar, which I know we'll get into, but to see them get gashed in the run was even bigger for me. To see Queen take multiple, poor gap reads and allow Damian Harris to just gash them over and over, and just the poor tackling. And it just seemed like they also had 8 penalties for 64 yards, which I guess is somewhat typical for this Baltimore team and the style that they play and the attitude that they play with. But to see them lose was pretty shocking. And to echo Greg's point, if we're getting matched up with Baltimore in the playoffs, like, I'm not thrilled, but I'm also not like, oof. Like, I'm taking that matchup. I'm like, okay, they can be beat. Let's see what we do. Especially if granted, we'll see what happens with fans, but especially if we get them at home, I don't think they are playing like the team that they were last year and that people thought they were going to be coming into this year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought they were going to be the team to beat more than Kansas City, even, and which is crazy.
And it wasn't crazy. It wasn't crazy to say that.
Yeah, but I was one of the people who I picked the Steelers to win the division, and I said Baltimore would be the first wild card team. With a loss like this, and in that competitive division where you never know, Cleveland could beat Baltimore, even Cincinnati could beat Baltimore at any time. We knew they were going to be beating up on each other. Baltimore might be looking at the second wild card spot right now, and that would be interesting if it works out that way and the Bills end up winning the division. Like you said, Anthony, that means, hey, if we play, it'll be in Buffalo against the Bills, and I think that makes all the difference. And this team certainly has not – their defense was supposed to be elite, right? And then they have Lamar Jackson in that offense to carry them. But right now, they look very, very beatable.
Yeah, the team's definitely like the Ravens are designed to get a lead and stay ahead, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it comes down to mistakes. I mean, they can't afford the mistakes. And with Lamar Jackson throwing an interception, it really changed the whole game, in my opinion.
Well, heck, not even the second wild card. There are 6 teams that are 6-3 right now. Oh, right. They're barely in the playoffs because of the division record tiebreaker over Cleveland. Right now, technically, Cleveland and Tennessee are out of the playoffs at 6-3. If things don't fall just right, Baltimore's got, Tennessee and Pittsburgh, Cleveland left on the schedule here. Like, they have to win some tough games or they might miss the playoffs.
Yeah, that would definitely be surprising.
Honestly, that game next week with Tennessee and Baltimore matters a lot.
That was a game that I was pinpointing. Once we lost to Tennessee, I started like looking at the schedule, just trying to find any game that the Titans could lose to make myself feel better. And in looking it down their line at the schedule, I was like, oh, they play Baltimore. That's a loss. And now I'm looking at that like that's kind of a toss-up. Both teams coming off a tough loss, but Tennessee played on the Thursday game. They have more time to prep and get ready and get healthy. And that's to everyone's point here. If Baltimore loses again, they're at 6-4. They're probably going to be on the outside looking in of the playoff picture. And then in addition to just every other team that's jumbled around their same record, you start getting into conference tiebreakers and divisional tiebreakers. And there's a legitimate scenario you can posit where Baltimore does not make the playoffs this year, which is wild to say.
Well, not to mention, Miami's schedule also opens wide open, right? It's so easy from now until the end of the year. I know Buffalo's in there, but I mean, the next few games for them, they still have the Jets. They're the team who really is going to decide Baltimore's fate here, right?
Well, and you got to be careful with that because I think a lot of people think exactly the way you just phrased that Miami's schedule is easy from now until the end of the year. And it's easy for now for the next 3 weeks. Right. They go New York, Cincinnati, or Denver, New York, Cincinnati. That's easy. But then they go Chiefs, Patriots, Raiders, Bills. That's not. That's a very legit stretch. You're talking right now, that's 3 out of 4 playoff teams to end the season. So I think a lot of people think that Miami has this cakewalk, and they do have 3 more games. It's very likely they're going to get to 9-3. But once they get past there, they're going to have to prove themselves. You go Chiefs, Patriots, Raiders, Bills. That's a much harder stretch.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it comes down, especially with the expanded playoff this year. It's something we're not used to. We haven't really experienced that. We don't know what that's going to look like and come down to. So it'll be great coming down the stretch. There's going to be some big football games. I know that week 17 game against Miami, I've been saying all year or two that game's going to be irrelevant. The Bills are already going to have the division locked up. Now that doesn't look like the case so far. So we'll see. That could end up being the game of the year for the division. So hopefully the Bills have it locked up before then. Miami might stumble in one of these games that they're supposed to win. I'm certainly not handing them 9 wins yet. We've seen what happened with Baltimore. I mean, it can happen to Miami too. So
Cincinnati beat Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. And now Tennessee has a big game against Baltimore with extra time to prep. So, the one thing I do want to say, on the screen here, we said thoughts on Lamar Jackson. We haven't really touched on that yet. It seems like, to Eric's point, in these big games, he's not great at playing from behind, right? If they suddenly are down 3 points, Lamar Jackson is not the quarterback to march your team down and go ahead and lead them to victory. He's great when they're ahead, but is this going to be a problem for him moving forward? And do you think this is more the expectations for the next couple of years, or is he going to be this franchise explosive player that they all saw last year?
So I think that it's hard because he's been good. Like he's been a solid, good player, and that it's tough to ask a ton more from a guy like him where like at 64% completion percentage, 7.1 yards per pass, 14 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and then the rushing yards on top of that. He's been good. I think that it's hard because he had so many easy, wide open throws last year that I think he looked like a phenomenal game-breaking passing quarterback. And really, there was a lot of really wide open stuff. And teams haven't caught up to their offense. It's not like they've stopped it. They still have a winning record. They're 6-3. They're putting up points. But teams have figured out enough that Mark Andrews isn't running wide open by himself down the seam where all you have to do is loft it to him to run for a 50-yard touchdown. He's not getting those gimmies anymore. And, for every game this year, he has multiple games where he hasn't hit anything over a 30-yard pass. So it's that kind of thing that's drawn in. And the pivot that Josh Allen has made with that intermediate and short passing where he still hit those, Jackson hasn't quite pivoted to that yet. So I think he's been good. And last year they were special because he looked exceptional. And now the scheme has come back a little bit and he's come back a little bit. So people who get excited that he's trash, he's not. He's still good. But he's just not the phenomenal guy that he looked like last year.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think with Lamar last year, he had a phenomenal year, an amazing year. And I think this year he's also a bit of a victim of his success last year. He set that bar so high and everybody came in fantasy football people talking about, well, I can draft him in the first round because he's basically an RB1 who also throws the ball. Baltimore fans thinking he's the greatest thing ever. And fair, he had an amazing year, an MVP season. But if you look at what happened, ironically, with the Bills game, and then especially in that Tennessee game with the statements that Logan Ryan made about kind of the blueprint being out there for how to shut down the Ravens a bit, or at the very least, give them problems and fluster them a bit on offense. We've seen that same kind of scheme carry over into this year. And much to Eric's point, it's a completely different offense, and it's a very different Lamar when they are not playing from being ahead. And it's almost similar to how the Colts defense was underneath Peyton Manning. That defense was designed to rush the passer and get sacks. And if they were in close games where the offense could keep running it, that Colts defense was in trouble. And with the Baltimore offense, if they're not ahead, if they're not able to just keep running, RPOs and read options and just handing it off to one of their 75 running backs that they all use, it's difficult for them. They're not a big chunk offense. They're a grind you out, grind it out, grind you down, continue to matriculate the ball down the field, to use a John Madden word that doesn't really exist. And when they have to play from behind, it's tough. And I also think it's a bit in their head at this point because they hear it and they know the losses they've had. And anytime they get down, I think everything just compounds on itself. And Lamar isn't sophisticated enough of a passer to start elevating that offense when they're down and they need to start moving it.
Right. And that comes down to playbook, in my opinion, as well. All new ideas become old eventually, and that's especially true in the NFL. I think there's a lot of film out there on this Ravens team and their new flashy offense, right? And I think teams are on to them, and I think they're forcing Lamar to make plays that he's really uncomfortable with. And like you said, that's going to get in his head. And I think we're going to see more of this Baltimore team kind of falling apart on offense as we move forward.
Great point here. From Reptile in the chat here. Some would say Baltimore and Lamar have not been the same team since we played them in week 14 last year. We did shut Lamar down. The Baltimore Ravens won that game, and we talked about this on the show a few weeks ago. But it was really Sean McDermott and our defense that exposed this offense for the first time. I mean, they were scoring 30, 40 points a game, making it look easy last year.
If not for that busted coverage on Hayden Hurst to open the second half, if that doesn't happen, I think the Bills win that game.
Yeah. And it was great to see. And then we saw the Tennessee Titans actually give credit to the Bills after their win in the playoffs, saying, oh yeah, we saw this from Buffalo when they played in Buffalo. So excellent point there. And I think this transitions well to our next topic, actually, because you could throw Baltimore in here as well. With the current situation, obviously the Bills are in the division lead, so we would probably be the 3 seed going in right now. So that means we would play one of these teams below. Do you have a preference of, would it be the Dolphins, who, as we said, are probably going to make it to 9 wins, or at least expected to pretty easily before their schedule gets rough down the stretch? The Raiders, who are one of the top playoff wildcard teams right now. The Browns, who, as we said, are in contention. I mean, this is an interesting group here. You could really put the other teams, as Greg mentioned, that are 6-3 in this conversation as well, that are currently out of the playoffs. Indy, who's another one?
Tennessee,
I think there's one
Cleveland.
more. Tennessee. Yeah. One of those teams is going to win the division. The other will probably end up, in contention for the wild card. But do you have a preference? Who would you like to see the Bills play, and why? Do you think one of these is the best matchup for our defense or our offense? What are your thoughts? Anthony, let's start with you. What do you think?
Ooh, I knew we were going to start with me based on the way we've gone through the other topics. I was already prepared. My ideal matchup is no one in the first round because we have the first round bye, but that's probably not going to happen. So I'd like to see Vegas again. Their defense doesn't worry me too much. Their offense, when healthy, is good. I think the hate that Derek Carr has gotten over the years has been exaggerated. And I like their offensive line. I like Josh Jacobs, but I know what I'm getting out of their defense, and I think we can pick them apart. And if they have to come to Buffalo, I'm anticipating in the playoff time there being some sort of weather obstacle that adds a little flavor to that game. I think that hinders Vegas more than it does us. I'm consciously thinking of saying Vegas instead of Oakland. It's really hard. I'm going to be like, Oakland. Yeah, I would take them. Everyone else is just a little I like Indianapolis's defense a lot. Darius Leonard is fantastic. The additions they made up front. Okereke is a fantastic linebacker. I'm 99.9% positive I said that name right. Their secondary, appreciate it. Their secondary is underrated. I also would take Miami as like my third option. Cleveland, I think their defense is legit. I don't want to see them. And I know their offense is super mercurial in terms of what they can do, but their running game is real. Their line is great. Nick Chubb is awesome. Kareem Hunt is sweet. So give me Vegas as my number one. And after that, I'm okay with several teams, but I want Vegas in the first.
All right, I'm gonna jump in quick here because I will give some credit to Sterling. It's tough for me to sit here with a straight face and wait for you guys to answer. Normally, this is where I would stand up and scream something like, "Are you kidding me, Cleveland? Come on, Cleveland can't beat anybody."
No, but their D is good. Myles Garrett pressures off the edge. Ward,
Myles Garrett is scary. I'll give you that.
The talent is still there, and what I worry in playoff games are eventually that talent kind of like rising to the top a little bit, doing some kind of something.
Fair enough.
That's only my thing, and just knowing what we have already and how we've played Vegas. I know no two games are the same going in, but I just don't think their defense has any real chance of giving us problems any way, shape, or form, no matter what we want to do. And I think we can stop there. Go ahead.
We know how we match up versus that team. We played them, right?
That's my thing.
Browns or Indy, teams that we haven't seen. We don't know what necessarily to expect from them in terms of the matchups that we'll get on the field.
Give me that devil that you know versus the devil that you don't. I know we can beat Vegas. I'm not worried. Give them to me.
I will say I don't want the Browns to make the playoffs because I don't think it'd be fair if they're the last playoff seed and the Bills had to go through 17 years because they expanded the playoffs. The Browns break their drought. That's the worst case scenario for me. But of these teams, what I would most like to see as a fan is Baker Mayfield throwing 6 interceptions to the Buffalo Bills and looking like the POS that I think he is. So, so we'll see. We'll see. I got some flack on Twitter. I called out Joe Marino. He was a guest on our show over the summer, and it wasn't on the show, but after the show, I talked to him because somebody had asked him to re-rate that draft, and he picked Baker Mayfield ahead of everybody else, ahead of Lamar, ahead of Josh Allen. And I was like, that's nuts. Why would you go with Baker? And I attacked him for it. And he defended it. But now, so I had a little fun with him on Twitter over that. But yeah, Baker, I'm a Baker hater. I've always said, you talked about the pieces they have on that team. On offense, you can't get better than what he's had on that team. And he's been able to do nothing with it. So
especially with how strong their running game is this year.
It's not Baker, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't add any more elite level names to a team like that.
They're so good in all the supporting cast. Even with Odell out, they still have weaponry. And then again, he only has to pass like 15 times a game at most. Just hand it off to your really good backs.
I would argue 3 of the games they won this year, they almost lost because of Baker. He threw key interceptions in those games, and then they ended up saying, we're not going to throw anymore. We'll just run. And then they end up winning.
Well, it's really telling when we scale back the quarterback and they start winning games.
Yes,
weird how that works.
It's not Baker in there. That's for sure.
Anyway,
I got a little bit off topic there. Eric, do you want to chime in? What do you think for the playoffs? Who's your ideal matchup and why?
I think it's Miami all day long, mostly because there is a rookie quarterback here who's unproven, and I trust Sean McDermott versus a rookie quarterback in the playoffs, in Buffalo, in cold weather. And I think the Bills are hungry for a playoff win after that defeat last year. And I think Miami's kind of new at this winning thing. They're kind of still feeling it out. So that to guarantee a win, I think that would be the matchup that I would prefer, honestly.
They're the Bills of 2 years ago, basically, when we first made the playoffs, right? That's where they are in their development. The only worry I have about the Dolphins, they say it's tough to beat a team 3 times, right? So if we play them week 17 and we win to win the division, and somehow we end up getting matched up with them in the playoffs, that would be an interesting scenario to play them basically in back-to-back weeks. So I don't know.
If the season ended today, the Bills would host Baltimore.
Yeah.
No, I think it's Miami.
Is it Miami?
Yeah.
I'm going off NFL.
They're over.
But,
they have the Bills as a 3 seed and the Dolphins as a 6 seed. The Ravens would go to Kansas City. Actually, it's the 2 seed.
Oof.
Which I would love to see.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Just to touch on the Baltimore matchup, though, real quick, hypothetically. I know it'd be a really tough matchup, and there's a good chance the Bills could lose that game. But if they did beat Baltimore in the first round, that would give them tons of momentum going into the divisional round, right? And that would be a huge. Get a staple win, get it out of the way. Yeah, you belong here. You know, confidence will be skyrocketed after that.
There's good news and bad news for Bills fans with the way they approach this, because the AFC is not like the NFC. The Bears aren't making the playoffs in the AFC. The Eagles aren't making the playoffs in the AFC. There's no pushovers in the first round. I'm going to assume that Cleveland and Vegas aren't making the playoffs in the AFC, and that my guess is we're going to have to play one of Indianapolis, Baltimore, or Tennessee, Miami, one of those. So let's assume the Colts win the division. That means our best and worst case scenario is Baltimore, Miami, and Tennessee. I don't think there's any easy matchups there, but I also don't think there's any team that I'm concerned about. If you tell me we're playing Tennessee again, I'm not concerned with that. Like, they can absolutely beat that team. I think they're the toughest of the three. I would probably prefer to play Miami just because Josh Allen has been such a Dolphin killer his whole stretch here. He's looked fantastic. Everyone's going nuts about this number one defense in the league. He had 415 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they never even got close enough to smell his cologne. I mean, there's just nothing that I'm concerned with of how they approach it. So, you know, don't get me wrong. If I have a chance in Tennessee or Baltimore or Miami, I would love for Miami to miss the playoffs just for everyone to cry about it. So obviously, I'd prefer to play Cleveland or Las Vegas. I do think, I think Lone Wolf's in the chat. He's a great fan for our show as well. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it is Cleveland. But if there's any team that's going to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and try to pull like a Patriots Week 1 game plan with 48 rushes and 8 passes, I'm a little nervous about Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think that we'd still beat them. They're still Cleveland, but I'm a little nervous that they try to just ram the ball down.
Run every day, yeah.
But yeah, overall, if you give me a choice, I'll take Cleveland. I'll take Las Vegas. I'll take Miami. I'm not concerned. I think if we play Baltimore or Tennessee, those are the kind of teams that if we played 10 times, we'd win 6 out of 10 and just hope that the one is in the playoffs. I think the Bills are the right 3 seed. I think they're the 3rd best team in the AFC and deserve to be the 3 seed and should beat any of the teams below that.
Yeah, I think what's different about this year for the Bills, right? We made the playoffs, right? We proved we can get there multiple years now. But the saying, you know, the word on the street, oh, the Bills didn't play anybody during the year. That's why they made it to the playoffs. The difference this year is when we get to the playoffs, we've seen most of these teams already. We've already played them, let alone, you know, we'll be prepared for the matchup whichever matchup we get. So the majority of the teams that we're talking about, the Bills have already played Kansas City. We're going to play Pittsburgh.
The majority of our schedule, 7 out of the 10 teams we've played so far are in the playoffs as of today.
That's so impressive to me. And to be 7-3 and where we are and a heartbeat away from 8-2, you know, that's an impressive place to be with this kind of schedule, and a great place to be because, as I've been saying all year so far, the Bills are not playing their best yet, and we want them to be playing their best going into the playoffs when we have to see these teams again, that even the teams that beat us, like the Tennessee or the Kansas City, I think we match up well with any of these teams, and that it will be a great game no matter who we end up with, and hopefully that first round we will be the favorite and we will be able to get a win to move on to that, you know, play the bigger guns like Pittsburgh and Kansas City.
I think that's what, to add on to your point real quick there, that's what's the exciting thing about this Bills team this year is, like, even any of the matchups we're talking about, first round, whatever, there's some that are more ideal than others, depending on, you know, how you're viewing it. But there is no team that I think like, well, we can't beat them. Well, that's a loss. Like, if we execute the way we're capable of, not even if we can execute, like, can we do? No, we're capable of beating any of the teams in the AFC. Will we, and will we execute on that day? You hope so, but there is no team in the AFC that outclasses us to the point that we got no shot. And to the point about the schedule that Greg and Anthony you both made, Anthony, that's a great name. The Bills team this year, the Bills team this year going into the playoffs, I'm superstitious, so knock on wood, but we should make the playoffs. It's a battle-tested team. We've had a tough schedule. We played good opponents as teams, as individuals. It's a different Bills team as we head towards January.
Well, and I'll even say that I don't think any team's going to beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I think they're the best team in football. I think that the Bills have the best chance to beat the Chiefs of any other team in football. I think that they have the kind of offense that can go shot for shot. And yeah, I think the Chiefs would beat us 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10, but they wouldn't be 10 out of 10. We could beat them and we could outscore them and be able to keep up and go shot for shot with them. So I don't know that I'm going to pick it, but they could. And you touched on it earlier. If you look at the Bills, people keep throwing up, and Eric, I'm not picking on you. I think most people think the way that you described it, that, oh, Miami has this easy schedule and the Bills have this killer schedule. Yeah. And I'm like, well, the Bills play the Steelers. The Bills play the Steelers. The Dolphins play the Chiefs, and every other game they're going to be favored. Like the Bills are going to be I just looked at it now by Vegas. The Bills are favored in 4 out of the remaining 6, and the 1 is only because it's on the road. Like it's just not going to be that crazy of a game. I think that, and heck, they might be favored in 5 out of the 6, depending on how rough
down the stretch
San Francisco looks on the road there. So
is that
in
the
New England on the road? No, right now they have those as both as picks.
Yeah. Okay. So straight up.
3 of those are primetime games, possibly 4. Right. We still don't know about Denver.
Yeah,
I think that's added value, right? That puts a lot of pressure on the Bills to be favored on primetime. And I think Miami has the advantage here where they're under the radar. I'm not saying they're going to beat Kansas City.
No,
they could easily get 10 wins here.
If they beat Kansas City,
10 wins will be a disappointment. Finishing 3-3 in this schedule will be a disappointment.
Oh, right. God, yes, absolutely.
So when you look at it like that, they only have to win 3. You know, it's an easy schedule for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it works out. If you look at the remaining schedule, we'll get into this a little more when we get to the Bills section. But I do want to move on to our next topic around the league here. There's been one of the most interesting teams to watch this year, I think, is the Minnesota Vikings. And we've talked about them a little bit on this podcast because they started out, Dalvin Cook has been putting up numbers and looks really good. And now could be even in MVP conversations the way he's carried this team. Without him, they weren't able to win. They weren't able to do anything. He comes back, all of a sudden they're undefeated, and they're back in the conversation for contending for the division again, let alone making the playoffs in the NFC. So there's been some talk. Dalvin Cook is the best running back in the NFL. And I have him in a couple fantasy leagues, a couple of keeper leagues. I'm lucky there. So I'm happy to see that he's back and healthy. But just the conversation around, I mean, there's other guys you could throw in there, maybe Alvin Kamara. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think Dalvin Cook is now the number one running back in the NFL? And does he have a legitimate shot at becoming the MVP?
I don't think Minnesota's record is going to give him a shot. And I think that in the modern NFL, a running back honestly might have to go for 2,000 yards to be able to get the MVP. Like, I just don't know with what quarterbacks do nowadays. And if you have, people were trying to make the case for Kyler Murray or other people. Patrick Mahomes is 8-1 with 25 touchdowns and 1 interception. The man is the MVP. Like, settle down. Nobody else is winning right now, short of him stopping playing football. And I like Dalvin Cook. I think he's in a perfect situation with the most conservative coach in the NFL, and he's really good. So I think he's arguably the best running back. Derrick Henry's in a similar situation. If you give me my choice, you said the other name, and I always pick it by best. If I could cherry pick every roster in the NFL and put one player on the Bills, Alvin Kamara is my choice. That man is the most dangerous weapon in the NFL coming out of the backfield. But if my secondary, if that wasn't an option and you let me take Dalvin Cook, I'd take him too.
Yeah, I'll second that notion. I love Alvin Kamara. I've had him every fantasy league year since he's been in the league. I love the style of back that he is. Right now, if we're taking into account right now who's playing, who's hurt, it's between Cook and Alvin Kamara. I think it depends on the definition of best in terms of what kind of offense you are going to run. I think Cook, for as good as he is in the passing game and he can catch and he has a little more breakaway speed and home run ability, I think to Greg's point, he's more of a traditional type of running back or more conservative. Like, we're going to run the ball 30 times a game. He's going to tote that 27 times. Whereas Kamara, he's touching the ball 25 times, but it might be 15 rushes and 10 catches, or it might be 15 catches and 10 runs, depending on what you're doing and how you can use him. I think Kamara is the NFL's best running back. Now, if all things were equal, a healthy Saquon Barkley is a very dangerous man. But I'm taking Kamara every day just because of his effectiveness as a Swiss Army knife type running back. I mean, he can tote it and he can catch it. He runs such crisp routes, whether it's coming from the outside, the inside, coming on the jet sweeps, coming out of the backfield. He excels at that option route, read the linebacker, read the defense, timing aspect of coming out of the backfield. He does so many things. And yeah, it would be, but again, Dalvin Cook is phenomenal. You want to put him as a 1B or even a 1A, 1B, I'm fine with it. I would take Kamara, but I got no problem with Dalvin.
Kamara is going to get Travis Etienne drafted in like the top 20.
I like Etienne. Oh man, he's so fast. I still can't believe Clemson lost to Notre Dame. Sorry, that's not the topic right now, but it's not.
College, Eric, are you on the same page with these guys? Would you take Kamara, or is there some other?
I do think Kamara's probably he's the biggest weapon in the league, in my opinion. But for running back that does the most for his team, I think it's Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, and those two guys. Like you said, you take Dalvin Cook out of that offense, they're nobody, right? You put them in, they're somebody. So when you talk about MVP and things like that for a running back, there's just not a lot of those guys around anymore. And I think there's only probably 2 or 3 that you can even talk about. And Dalvin Cook is definitely in that conversation, probably at the top of the list.
I mean, I think I'm on the same page in terms of if I could have any running back in the NFL, it would probably be Kamara, just because of what he can do when he receives the ball, or even on a quick pass or whatever. He's very good at getting yardage after he just touches the ball.
A quick quiz for you guys. I will give $20 to anyone who can name the leading rusher in the NFC right now.
Ooh, NFC. So I'm assuming it's not Dalvin Cook.
Boston Scott. Good guess. He did have a 97-yard touchdown.
Sorry, the next leading russer after Dalvin Cook.
The next leading rusher.
That's a trick question. Okay.
Yeah.
What division?
It's Ronald Jones. I would have let you guys guess for a while, but nobody would have said that for 10 more minutes.
No.
So
I almost said Kyler Murray.
He's had a sneaky amount of yardage. Everybody talks
unbelievable.
about.
I was sitting there looking at the leading rushers when you were talking about that, Eric. Ronald Jones has 730 yards.
He gets a decent amount of carries, and then Fournette got hurt, and everybody talks about Brady and Brown and Evans and Godwin and Gronk and the whole crew, but Bruce Arians has been decently committed to the run, and granted, Ronald Jones had a massive game. It is working, and they got a decent amount of balance. Plus, he had that 98, 99 yard.
That had the 192 yards this past weekend helped, but
Absolutely.
I looked at I was like, how is he third in the NFL?
Damn. That's crazy that Cook is even where he is though too, considering he missed 2 full games? 2.5? Kind of
3 games.
And he's still in the NFL.
He was injured in that first one.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nuts.
And here's the case that I'll make for Dalvin Cook as a player who could be in contention for the MVP. Again, his team lost every game he was out, and now they're winning every game he's in. If they're able to come back and beat the Packers in that division and win that division, that would be an unbelievable story for this team. And it would instantly become one of the biggest stories in the NFL from this season. So I think that could leave him in that conversation, especially where we're in this place when guys who were expected to be out in front, obviously we said that Patrick Mahomes is in a tier himself, but the next couple of guys, the Aaron Rodgers is the, Russell Wilson, those guys have kind of stuttered a little bit. Yeah, right. So those guys are Sam Darnold. So those guys
people love narratives. So if you say, I think you're onto something.
And
if
Pat
he
Mahomes
leads them back and people just get bored with the greatness of Mahomes and they've already voted for him, that's not crazy.
And Pat Mahomes is expected to do what he's doing at this point, and everybody's like, oh, it's just Mahomes, even though it's still very impressive. But I think Dalvin Cook could make a story for himself. And in terms of being the best running back in the league, something happened with the Saints that we haven't talked about either, and that's Drew Brees going down for an indefinite amount of time. Unfortunately,
rib fractures on both sides and a punctured lung.
God, how did he even get up after that?
It's Jameis time.
Tyrod's doctor got to him.
Jameis Winston. We've seen what he can do in this league, but he But now we got to see, can this team do what they did last year and rally around the backup quarterback and continue to play? Will Alvin Kamara still get his stats, his yardage, his touches in these games enough to where he's in the conversation still? Again, I think at a skill level, if I could have any player, it'd probably be him. But right now, I think Dalvin Cook's going to take this title and run with it for the rest of the year. What do you guys think about the possibility of Kamara's stats getting decreased because of this injury to Drew Brees? The Saints, FYI, are my Super Bowl pick, and I'm still holding to that. I believe they can do it. When they're healthy, they can beat anybody.
I'm raising my hand to go first because this is near and dear to my heart and my fantasy team. The Saints are my Super Bowl pick out of the NFC to start the year as well. I think it's really interesting with Jameis. I've seen both sides that people want to play, especially with regards to Kamara. Like, his rapport with Drew Brees is so good, and Drew Brees is so great at dictating the type of success to a degree and orchestrating a bit, puppet mastering some of that success for Kamara. But then I've also heard, the other side of Jameis Winston and his arm strength and being the younger, stronger, I'd say, quarterback or athlete than Drew Brees. He has a bigger arm. He has the potential to push the ball a little more downfield. Does maybe that expand the offense and expand the range in which the Saints offense operates? And maybe that opens up things for Kamara a little more. I understand that side of it. I think Kamara is going to be okay, but I think if we're talking here, like, the Saints are going to be completely fine with Jameis at the helm. No disrespect to Jameis, but Drew Brees is still a fantastic quarterback. Arm strength or not, age or not, he's still a very good quarterback. He is still very good at reading defenses, setting everyone else up for success. And I think Kamara's numbers are going to take a hit a bit. I also think we might see, to balance things out, I think we might actually see a little more Latavius Murray as they try to establish a more physical ground game between the tackles and then use Kamara to kind of like change some things up and be pure pass catcher for Jameis.
Just an FYI, out of Jameis Winston's 10 passing plays in the second half of the game yesterday, 6 of them were targets to Kamara.
Yeah, and weren't the other 4, I think the other 4 were Michael Thomas?
Yes, there's the only 2 people who threw the ball.
So they're going with like that.
That's all you need.
Style of just like throw it to the studs and that's it. So
don't forget about Jared Cook.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
everyone forgets about Jared Cook.
I know.
Well, the one thing about Drew Brees is he opens the field. You have to cover anybody who's out there when Drew Brees is on the field, because he can find Jared Cook if he gets open. He can find their 4th string wide receiver if he's out there for a 5-yard, 10-yard pass, right? It's not just relying on Kamara and Thomas, even though they're 2 elite players.
I'll make the argument that, yeah, but when Drew Brees is out there, only his 11 guys are in play. When Jameis Winston's out there, all 22 people on the field are in play.
Right.
Yeah,
I love this.
Right there.
I love this comment. Yeah, that's great. Corners love Winston. Yes, they do, because he can definitely. He threw as many touchdowns as he did interceptions last year.
That's still bananas. 30-30 is still bananas.
Yeah, 30 picks. Oh my God,
it's a lot.
That's like Sam Darnold's whole career stats. One Jameis Winston season.
He'll get there.
He's working on it.
That's that worry, I think, with Kamara and like that Saints offense. Like, does the timing of it and the execution of it like slip a little with Jameis? I think the big play might be there a little more, or just pure volume. But if that volume is there without the level of execution or sophistication we're normally used to seeing with Drew, then it can get a little dicey.
The biggest thing they have is, say that they need to give Brees a full month to get right. Their next 4 games are Falcons, Broncos, Falcons, Eagles.
So studs.
So Jameis is going to look just fine.
We'll see. I'm worried about this first one, though. I think the Falcons have started to reach their stride on offense. Their defense is dismally
we can see shootout.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll take a Jameis Winston, Matt Ryan shootout.
I'll take it.
I think Matt Ryan wins that, though.
I think so. That's what I'm saying. I think actually Matt Ryan is less likely to throw interceptions. Yes, right. And he's more chemistry with the 2 guys he's got, assuming they do have some injuries still on Atlanta. I haven't looked up if Kelvin Ridley is back or not.
He started. He was on the field for warmups yesterday, and he's still it's still like wait and see and go day by day with him. He's a real fantastic wide receiver. Atlanta they draft receivers so well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty good position to be in. So we'll see. That's going to be a tough first matchup. I think if he can get through that, if they can get through that with a close win, they're smooth sailing, just like they were last year when Brees went down. So they're a contender in the NFC to be one of the top teams. So we'll see how that works out and how long Drew Brees is actually going to be down for, So, all right. Now, we've it's a bye week, right, ladies and gentlemen? So we like talking around the league. This has been fun. But, we're a Bills show. We still got to talk about our Buffalo Bills. So that's where we switch to our segment, Inside Slant. And I know this is going to be a little bit painful for us this week as we opened up with really tough loss to the Cardinals on a last-second Hail Mary pass that none of us will soon forget, unfortunately. But there's still a little bit of good to talk about in this game. So that's why I think we should lead this segment with, it was a very tough loss, a shocker. The Bills come back and go ahead. But then, obviously that Hail Mary pass with no time left wins it, or with 1 second left wins it for the Cardinals. But there were some good things that happened in this game. And I'll start with my favorite thing from this game, or maybe I'll steal two in one here. Definitely that last drive by Josh Allen, which we can talk about if one of you wants to expand on it. The go-ahead drive, if we win that game, Josh Allen leads in that. But the one thing that I loved seeing in this game was Cole Beasley being the leading receiver and getting 110 yards, I think it was, on the catches. He made the most of them. Josh Allen was able to find him smooth. He made one awesome one-handed catch that was huge. It seemed like Beasley was the man in this game, and I've been waiting for that to be the case because with guys like, Diggs and Brown on the field, Beasley's going to get his chances to be open a lot. And that was awesome to see that connection working out in this game. Definitely a positive. If we had won, that would probably be one of the major storylines. But unfortunately, we didn't. So we're looking for the silver linings here. Eric, you said I stole yours with the last drive. Do you want to expand on that and talk about your feelings during that drive instead of how it ended?
Well, yeah, I think, there was some sloppy moments for the Bills, obviously, but they make the plays they need to make, and it's so nice to see, and it gives you confidence as a fan. Like, our team actually is good, right? Josh Allen comes through again and basically puts the team ahead when it wasn't looking good, in the last 40 seconds. I was about to say the game's over, right? Obviously. Texting my friends, telling everybody, Josh Allen's the man. I told you, thank God he's with a Buffalo Bill.
The original Josh Allen guy right there.
But that still remains true. That remains true even in this game. I mean, it takes a fluke play to beat the Bills, especially with them traveling across the country on the road. I think they played a hell of a game, and I think they come back strong in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan, right? We have the bye week. We're going to get healthy. We're going to get ready. We have the Chargers. Should be a team that we're favorite against by far. Definitely the better team on paper. So hopefully we come back with a win after this type of loss. But again, we're looking for the silver linings in this game. Greg, what do you got for us? Anything different than what we've said?
There are no silver linings. Losing sucks.
Love that.
There are no
we all felt.
There are no moral victories in that. So I'll say that, if you're going to go into the bye, after we beat the Patriots, if we told everyone that we were going to split the next two and go into the bye 7-3, everybody would have said, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's do it. Yep. So the fact that with 11 seconds left in the game, we thought we were going to be 8-2 does make it feel deflating, but they're still 7-3. They're still in a really good spot. They're still winning the division. They still have all the tiebreakers in hand against Miami, even though everyone's trying to hand them the division. So I will say the silver lining is this is a great fork in the road moment. It's great to have that fire in your belly and that burn and hurt this early, to go in there and not take any days off, not take anything for granted, to go in there and not overlook the Chargers coming out of the bye, not to overlook a banged up 49ers team. I think they're going to come out on fire and smoke these first couple teams. I think they're going to be looking really good. And like I said, I think that they're looking at 4-2, 5-1 down the stretch here. I think that they're much more in position for 11-12 wins than trying to fall back into people thinking they're 10-6 or that they're going to get passed by the Dolphins. I think they're going to be in really good shape. So I would say the silver lining is I think it avoids any of those, overlooked trap game kind of things. And now they're going to have that fire in their belly. And thank God it seems like we've gotten through this without any other huge injuries. Aaron and I talk a lot about how we've had this weird dichotomy of a laundry list of injuries on the injury report, but weirdly the fewest season-ending injuries in the whole league. So that means we have a chance down the stretch to have the entire team back healthy, and that there's a chance we're going to have 4 or 5 full games with the entire starting offensive line and the full complement of receivers and Milano back and all 3 cornerbacks back and everything back. And that gives me hope that we haven't seen the best from this team, and the idea that maybe they click and have their best performance as we get into late November and December. That's what we really want, is going into the playoffs at full speed and banking those 7 wins already against that many playoff teams is going to have them already tested. So that's my silver lining, is that they're not going to take any mental breaks going down the stretch.
My silver lining is knowing that Isaiah McKenzie can be quarterback if need to, and that he's got a rocket for an arm. No, I think I got 2 main ones. The first, Anthony, you and Eric already touched on it, that game-winning drive from Allen, clutch, good reads. I know the catch by Beasley was immaculate, and it was kind of a bad throw by Josh, but then the throw to Diggs, great timing, laser throw, good read. The offensive line, Williams and Dawkins didn't hold up great. Allen got pressured almost as soon as he finished his drop back, but he hangs in there, fires a dart, and Stephon Diggs beats one of the best corners in the NFL, makes a great catch. Phenomenal drive. Awesome to see the offense succeed there. My other silver lining, despite the fact of giving up the Hail Mary throw and giving up 32 points, the Bills defense, to a degree, they lose a bunch in the secondary due to COVID. They're still without Milano. Epinesa goes down in the game. He was having a pretty decent game up until he went down, but he was more important for the rotation aspect because of the type of offense the Cardinals are running. Dane Jackson goes down. Dane Jackson also had a really good game, which I know we're going to talk about Dane Jackson in a bit. But for all intents and purposes, I know they didn't see it through to the end, but the Bills defense did a pretty good job of kind of frustrating Kyler Murray, stalling that Cardinals offense a little bit. And for the struggles that we saw the Bills offense have when we were up 23-9, again, they didn't finish it, but the defense kept us in the game. The play that Micah Hyde makes on Kyler Murray towards the goal line to force another stop, the 3-and-outs they forced, the takeaways they forced, and just being able to kind of keep the Bills in it. We saw flashes of that Bills defense that was top 3 in the league last year and was able to still get things done. And I hope, or my hope is, like Greg mentioned, as we continue to get healthier and Matt Milano comes back, who is someone I think we all can agree is extremely key for this Bills defense, as we start to get healthier and get our full complement of players back and full rotation back, I think it's something that we can point to. And again, we lost, but we handled Kyler Murray pretty well. And even going back to the week before against the Seahawks, I know we gave up 34, but one was a garbage time touchy, and one was that blown touchdown to Moore that Russ threw from midfield. So we kind of gave up 20 points, and we forced Russell Wilson into 4 turnovers. So the defense is starting to put things together a little bit, and they're doing it while being banged up and missing some pieces.
Certainly moving in the right direction with the pieces you have available to you, which might be the case going down the stretch too with COVID. You know, you never know what's going to happen with that. You know, we want everybody to stay healthy, but we saw that break up the plans this weekend with, you know, Josh Norman going down on Saturday with COVID and taking a few people with him from the roster, which you thought was going to be a weakness. But to your point, that secondary played pretty well. I'll add one more that I'm surprised nobody brought up, but I'm glad it came back to me because I have been defending him all year long. How about Tyler Bass? How about this kid coming out here, kicking 50-yard field goals like they're right in front of him, chip shots, right? Beyond 50, 52, 50, what was it, 54, 59?
1,000.
Yeah, 54, 55, 59. That's unbelievable.
Straight bats, homie.
3 50-yard field goals, 3 breaking field goals. Unbelievable. We haven't been in this situation all year where he's had to attempt one from a long distance like this. We know that's his strength, and now he showed, yes, that's my strength. And again, all year I've heard, he missed a field goal. He's terrible. Let's cut him. Let's move on. And I'm like, what the heck's your problem? The laces were in on 2 of his missed kicks. Yeah. He's nailed everything else. Every other game you're not talking about him. He misses 1 field goal in a game we win, and you want to cut him. It's like, no, that's ridiculousness in its full effect. And now we're seeing that this guy could be a difference maker down the stretch when you need a 59-yard field goal, or you know the defense thinks they get a stop, and all of a sudden they're lining up for a 60-yard field goal because Tyler Bass is there and he can make that happen. So confidence in Tyler Bass way, way, way up. Stock in Tyler Bass way up after this game.
Yeah, and I think his leg power was, you know, highly advertised in the offseason, but as fans, rookie kickers, especially me, scare me.
Yeah,
I want to see it. I want to see it.
That
we have
that
seen it
59
now.
yarder, that
Yeah.
59 yarder would have been good from 66.
Exactly.
It was dead.
Exactly.
Dead.
That was great.
Yeah,
Great kick.
one of those services that does the the measurements
Oh,
and
they calculated
the
it,
distance. It would have been good from 66, which would have been an NFL record.
That's insane. That's insane. But the thing is, like, you have this kicker checklist you got to see, right? You got to hit all the check boxes to say this guy's our kicker. And I think one of them is a game winner. You got to hit a game winner for me to put him in that box. But that definitely sealed the deal for, this guy is legit. It's legit.
Well, and you
where
heard
does
the announcer
swag come
talking
from?
about it. I do like that he talks trash.
Tremendous swag.
You talk about and the left eye. I dig that.
Yeah.
So the fact that the announcers were talking about it, that no, seriously, the Bills only need to get like the 40-yard line to be able to put him within range. Like normally you need to guard to the 35 or the 30. You'd be like, no. So if they had gone down there, we get to that. So to your point, Eric, let's say we have a game with the Steelers and it's coming down to that at the end of the game and he's lining up for a 60-yard game winner. I'm sitting there going, yeah, he could do this. We can make that. Like you're not thinking like, oh my God, this is going to be like a 1 in a million shot. Be like, no, he's got this.
He can make this. Or you just throw it up with Josh from there. Josh can throw it that far. Yeah, so many options.
Yeah. Well, I'd much rather be kicking a field goal for a win than having Josh throw a 1 in 1,000 Hail Mary to try.
No one catches Hail Marys. That never happens.
Nobody. Never ever happens. Impossible.
What's a Hail Mary?
Yeah. Never heard of her.
We can't talk about Tyler Bass though without talking about Anthony's boy Borquez.
Oh God,
shanking a punt.
Oh my God.
Yeah, here we go. There we go.
Signing up. You had to bring up Borquez. What did you couldn't. We couldn't go a whole show without me doing a rant. Come on.
It was a key part of the game as well. I thought. Flip momentum. Flip the field.
Oh my God! I could have punched the ball further than he kicked it. And nobody was even near him. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You have one job. He got it cleanly. There was nobody in his face.
Oh, yeah. He knew it was bad too.
I'm like, what did you need the ball 10 yards?
I think you can make the argument.
I would absolutely live it. There's no except. I don't care if he kicks it 70 yards every other time after this. That was absolutely unacceptable, and you should not be on an NFL roster if you do that.
I think you can make the argument with no weather, no wind, no near block, no bad snap.
Yeah.
It's legitimately might be the worst clean scenario punt I've ever seen.
In the NFL, this is not acceptable.
Like, there was no factor that would have made it shank.
Great, you can punt it 70 yards sometimes. Great, sometimes. But if you're going to trade 70 yards 9 times for a 10-yard once, no team in the NFL will sign up for that. Not one. Because that 1 10-yarder means the other team's getting points, and that's exactly what happened.
Luckily, on that scenario,
them, but
it didn't even matter that the defense stopped them.
Yeah, because
they
were
had
already
-3 yards. The Bills held them to a -3 yard 3 and out, and they got 3 points.
Yeah,
like that's such a negative scenario. Your defense had a -3 yard 3 and out and gave up 3 points. That's hard to do.
Stupid game.
It takes a special punter to do that.
It takes a special punter.
This is a scenario where you missed having the reporters in the locker room, because I'm sure somebody would have went up to him and been like, "What the hell happened, dude? Like, come on! I mean, 10 yards. There was no wind. There's nobody in your face. It hit your foot. Like, what happened?"
I think it's a counterbalance. Anytime Tyler Bass has an amazing game, Borquez has to say they're not allowed to be good at the same time. I think
there's like the energy out of him.
Yeah. It's like the flux capacitors. I don't know.
Oh man, yeah, that is. I mean, again, he seems to have fixed the holding problems. Well, we don't know if that was snapping or holding problems. I was putting it on Borquez when he was missing those for the laces being out, laces being in, but. I mean, it could have been also the snapping, but for the most part, they've cleaned that up. And now he's making these huge field goals that we need to make. But God, the punting, we just can't punt ever. I don't care. Any situation,
I support that fully.
4th and 45 on your own
kick
20.
A field goal.
What's the point? Go for it. Yeah, kick 90 yards. Come on, he's got it. We went a little off the rails there, I know, but we are still talking.
What do you mean we? We went off.
Hey, again, I'm giving some credit to Sterling for being the MC. I got to get a rant in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
to my defense, I wasn't going to bring him up, but you brought him up. So
Yeah,
you were
started
just
him.
trying
I
to
threw
trigger
an
me.
accident. That's
You
totally
threw me the
accidental.
alley-oop. I'm not just going to let it go in the stands. I'm going to slam dunk. You know?
Well, we started talking about this defense and how they were a little bit more impressive than maybe we would have thought. Certainly not a right home about type of game, but a big part of this game was Dane Jackson coming in again, forced into playing time because of the injuries and the inability, the COVID list situation. He comes in, he plays unbelievably well, looks like a legitimate number 2 cornerback, and could be the guy for the future for us moving forward. So, I mean, in this game, when you have that many plays, that many breakups, he's been, obviously, we've said many times on this show too, all the time, anytime you're lined up on the other side of Trey White, you're getting thrown at multiple times a game. 90% of the throws are coming your way, not that way, right? So it's unbelievable to see this kid come in here and be poised and ready to play. It's awesome to see. Maybe we have our number 2 guy. What do you guys think about Dane Jackson's performance in this game? I forget where we're at, but Anthony, we'll start with you on this one.
Copy that. I like it. Start with the best.
You brought it up. You brought it up in the last segment. So.
I did. I like that. Like the continuation, the continuity. I like what he's done. I know it's a small sample size still, but Eric did a really good breakdown of his interception against the Jets and the read that he made on the offensive on the play and how he felt the receiver, maintained his zone, eyes on the QB, smart read, good play. I really liked his hit against DK Metcalf in Seattle, against Seattle and Buffalo. And then this game against the Cardinals, I've liked his physicality. I've liked his tackling. He's a sure tackler. He's not afraid. All the proverbial, he's not afraid to stick his nose in and like get dirty, all those little proverbial things. But he's a solid form tackler. He brings it when he comes forward. My biggest thing was how was he going to be able to hold up in coverage, which he did pretty well for the majority of the game, including amazing coverage on DeAndre Hopkins on that first series. This is a rookie 7th round pick going up against arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL on an island in a goal-to-goal scenario where Kyler Murray, who's also having himself a phenomenal year, is just going to drop back and be like, I'm just going to throw it to my all-pro receiver. And Dane Jackson, again, small sample size, locked him up. And it wasn't like it was a bad throw. He played phenomenal coverage and made a play. And if he can be a thing going forward, my heart sank when I saw him go down and clutch his knee, and it looked kind of ugly. I'm hoping he comes out. I know he went back in the game, but he still didn't look a little right. I think there's potential there for him. I think his scheme fit is also very good with the Bills. The body type that he has and the skill set that he has fits very well into the scheme that McDermott and Frazier like to play. And sometimes that fit is more important than just what type of overall player that you can be. And maybe if he goes to another team, he's terrible. But all I know is so far in the Bills' defensive scheme, in what limited sample size there has been, he's played well and he's impressed me.
Yeah, I mean, the kid is certainly, even his first game, the first play went to him and it was a pass breakup and everybody was like, who's that? I'm like, that's Dane Jackson. Holy crap, that was huge. A great pass breakup on a 3rd down. Eric, you got anything to add about what you saw from Dane Jackson in this game?
Well, I agree with Anthony. I think great job there. The thing though is like Levi Wallace was undrafted, right? So the fact that this guy's a 7th round pick doesn't mean much as far as can he win the number 2 job in the future. I think it's level playing field. He put a lot of good film out there, and I think he sealed the deal to be on the team next year, and we'll see where it goes. I don't think the Bills at this point are going to get rid of him because he will absolutely make a team immediately. So I think he's going to be on this team for moving forward for the next few years, for sure.
The biggest thing you have, there are a lot of similarities between Levi Wallace, Josh Norman, and Dane Jackson. If you're going to play cornerback in the NFL and not be an elite athlete, which none of the 3 of them are, you have to be instinctive, aggressive, and willing to stick your nose in there to make tackles. Dane Jackson might do that better than Levi Wallace. I think that Wallace has longer arms, is a similar athlete, and has a leg up on experience, scheme fit, and communication in the secondary. I don't expect Dane Jackson to realistically have a chance to take that job this year, in that Levi Wallace just knows the scheme and the communication more, and Dane Jackson isn't materially better than him. But I do think it's noticeable how much more aggressive he is. I think that he's noticeably more aggressive in his approach, pass breakups, making plays on the ball. That's the biggest thing I want. And that we would say about Levi Wallace is you brought it up perfectly, Anthony. When you're playing opposite Trey White, you're going to get attention. The only way to stop that is to make plays on the ball and discourage them from coming at you. And if you're just going to let them catch it in front of you and make sound tackles, that's not terrible, but it sure ain't going to stop them from throwing the ball at you. So I do think long term, there's maybe a little bit more upside with Dane Jackson than Levi Wallace, and a chance that he could be more of what Josh Norman was, as a aggressive, intuitive, intelligent corner who made up for the fact that he wasn't an elite athlete by being exceptional in the other areas. And that's unfair. I'm not saying that Dane Jackson is going to have an all-pro season like Josh Norman did, but maybe more of that upside than what Levi Wallace did. And I think we could see that next year.
Yeah, and for where they got him in the draft, I mean, what a return on value already. If he does nothing else the rest of this year and just stays on the roster for next year, he's already done an amazing job.
You get anything from a seventh-round pick, that's value immediately.
Unbelievable.
Good point.
Yeah, and what do you think happens? What do you think happens when we get Norman and Levi and Taron Johnson and all these guys, these cornerbacks healthy? Do you think they find a place for Dane Jackson to get significant or, split playing time with one of them? Or do they try him in the slot? Because obviously Taron Johnson has struggled a little bit this year, although he's come on a little bit better in the past couple games.
Much better. I was really critical of Taron Johnson earlier. The last 2 games have been legitimately much good.
Better. Yes.
I would say that would be the spot. Some rotation there. I don't think that they would play him over a healthy Levi Wallace and a healthy Josh Norman. If it was either or, I could see a 70-30, 80-20 split where he gets some reps. If both Levi Wallace and Josh Norman are healthy on the outside, I find it hard to believe that down the stretch here, they'd play him over them. I could see him getting some rotation with Taron Johnson and some reps on special teams where he could be active on game day.
Yeah, I would second that notion. I don't think he's, in the mind of the coaching staff, I don't think he's getting placed above Levi or Josh Norman. I just made up a bill. But I could see rotation, and I think knowing that he's there and we have that capability is a nice depth piece going in for the rest of the year. I want to see what he looks like at nickel. I know Taron has been better. Not to be a Debbie
I think his aggression might really translate well in the nickel.
Yeah, that and Taron Johnson is aggressive and comes in with aggression and tackling as well, but he loses his technique so much and comes in so wildly. He did it on the first series against the Cardinals. He came in and just went flying at Drake and completely whiffed. And it made me, I rewound the screen because I thought it was Poyer. And I was like, there's no way Jordan Poyer just made that mistake. And then it was Taron. But Taron Johnson has been better. Yeah, it killed me. I was like, oh, but he played better the rest of the game. He stepped up. And I'd like to see Dane Jackson get a little more work at that nickel spot just because I'm not holistically confident in Taron Johnson. I'm much more confident in Levi and Norman as a platoon for corner 2 than I am confident in Taron Johnson as our go-to nickel guy. But what's encouraging is the fact that we're even having this conversation for a player drafted at that level. Tremendous value. And also to your point, I know you pulled up the comment. I completely agree with that comment. Going into next year, I like Dane Jackson, but I don't think he stops the Bills from drafting a corner in the first round or going early or going after someone in free agency. It's a nice depth piece. Yeah.
The fact that they
Sean
figured
McDermott
out
and Brandon Beane are going to draft a cornerback in the first round. I'll take.
Give me one.
Now, trust me, as a Bills fan, I would love to see that. I think we want that, but I'd put my money on linebacker, offensive line, any other position,
quarterback,
and cornerback, because we know what Sean McDermott does. He's got an elite corner on one side, and he pastes together whatever he can on the other side. So I'm not convinced we're going to draft a corner, although I'd be happy to see that because it would be nice to have 2 guys you can rely on.
Yes, please.
But yeah, Dane Jackson, I think he's got it. He's going to continue to get playing time. If he plays this well, they'll find a spot for him, whether it's on special teams maybe, but you got to get him on the field when he's the guy making the plays. And this is definitely a great spot to be in for the Buffalo Bills, because now if say Josh Norman comes back and he falters because he's still dealing with the hamstring or whatever it may be, great. Then we'll, we still got Levi. He's probably going to get the majority of the time, but then Dane Jackson will be the guy behind that. So having that next guy up is huge. And we certainly have had a slew of injuries at the cornerback position, as we know. So definitely a cool thing to look forward to during the rest of this season. I got one more topic in the Bills section here that I want to go over quickly, because this is one that I was shocked to hear Sean McDermott come out after the game and talk about the situation with Mitch Morse, because he made it. He said in the post-game conference, somebody asked him about Mitch Morse not playing, and he said it was a coach's decision. Mitch Morse was healthy. We wanted to see that same offensive line that played last week play again. Now, I personally think that is the biggest load of BS I've ever heard from Sean McDermott. He's not usually a coach who lies to us, but this, I don't know the NFL rules, if there's some sort of technicality rule that
that's what I was going to bring up.
You can't technically say we just gave him an extra week off because he was injured. So, I mean,
they didn't have him on the injury report, and they got yelled at for that and almost got fined for that with Jerry Hughes at the end of last year.
Yeah. So is that the reason? Because this is, I mean, let's be honest. That's a ridiculous notion, right? We don't want to see.
He had back-to-back sentences where he said it was momentum and we want to take a look at that, but no, he wasn't benched. One of those two things is a lie. They both can't be true at the same time. One of those two sentences is a lie. So obviously, sorry, I'm going to give a really weird conspiracy theory tangent. The only two reasonable things in my mind are either he's not allowed to say that they needed to give him an extra week off because technically he cleared concussion protocol, and saying that he was still injured would violate the injury disclosure that we already got yelled at before with Jerry Hughes, or they're hiding the fact that he's going to retire and that it helps the team to wait until after next year to announce that. Because if they announce it now, it accelerates $10 million in dead cap and puts them over the cap. So I don't believe that's the case. But if he doesn't go out there for the first snap against the Chargers, I will officially be very, very concerned. I believe he's going to go out there the first snap with the Chargers, and that the reason that they didn't is because it violates the injury disclosure to say that, we just needed to give him an extra week and we wanted to be careful because he wasn't quite ready. And we know technically he cleared the protocol, but we weren't ready to push it. And I believe that's by Occam's razor. That's by far that's the simplest and most likely answer. I believe that that's what happened here, but he sure as hell could have made that a hell of a lot easier. I had several DMs with people who were at the press conference, who were involved in the press conference. All of them felt the same way, in that and the one question I told them that they should have followed up was, the next person should have asked, will Matt Milano get his starting spot back when he returns? And then as soon as he gave the normal BS, well, we're going to decide each unit's starting lineup as it happens, everyone could have rolled their eyes and said, oh, okay, he's just giving us the normal nonsense coach speak. Whereas if he had answered and said, well, no, of course Matt's going to take his starting spot back, then you would have had the defining difference between the two.
I'll tell you the one thing that irks me the most about this, that obviously we as Bills fans are like, that's got to be a load of BS. And maybe you're like, it does cause you to pause and say, wait, is there something major going on here that we're not seeing? A la the Quentin Spain situation, right? Like there was something going on there that we didn't see and still don't have the full story on. Hopefully that's not the case here. And all indications would be that Mitch Morse will be the starting center when he comes back, unless, some conspiracy is out there. But
and I went back and listened to it like 2 or 3 times. You can tell his honest instinctual answer was that when they said, well, was he benched? He said, no, he wasn't benched. Like that was the one that was instant and immediate. The other one was, he probably felt a little annoyed that Matt kept badgering him about the question, and then said, we'll decide that, because he even answered it with we'll decide that for each unit as we go, Matt. Like he even added the annoyed Matt at the end. So I'm going to read into that the one was the instinctual immediate answer, and the other one was him being annoyed that he kept asking. But he invited controversy and conflict that he normally does everything possible to avoid. So I get why people are questioning it.
That's what I was going to say, is now you've opened the whole thing. I've read articles now this week on, is there controversy for the Bills offensive line? Mitch Morse, is he going to, if they cut Mitch Morse, it'll cost his money. I'm like, cut Mitch Morse? What are you talking about? Cut Mitch Morse? You're crazy. No, that's not going to happen. But it's, maybe he's saying it within the bubble of the team. Look, this is what we had to say, and we know what's going on in these doors, so don't worry about it. But still, out to the outside world, this is now an unnecessary controversy centered around this team, which McDermott has done a great job of avoiding over the years. So,
and if you with how well Morse has played this year and the job that he's done, like that's why you elite, being paid like one of the top centers in the league and then playing like it, he makes a tremendous difference. And so I think anytime we see anything that wasn't a straightforward, like, well, yeah, like Mitch Morse is awesome, it's like, wait a minute, he's playing too good, something's going on. And now that we are the Cover One Psychology podcast, I mean, it makes sense. You got to dive into the story of what's going on, because if you're just looking at it from the eye test and the X's and O's and on field, Mitch Morse and then playing fantastic are like the two hand-in-hand things. So if he's healthy and he's not playing, something is up.
The chat's talked a ton about the problems with the run game and needing to get back online. That involves, Deion Dawkins, Cody Ford, Mitch Morse, John Feliciano, Darrell Williams. You get the starting offensive line back there with Mitch Morse making the pivots, and by far the best movement center in the NFL. That dude gets out in space like nobody's business. Then we can start running to the outside again. All of a sudden, we're going to fix a whole bunch of those run game issues. That's the kind of thing that I want to see getting back to health.
Him and Feliciano on the field. What do we have? Like 3 snaps with them both out there again? So please, let's see that again. We need that offensive line.
I don't think we can ignore Mitch Morse's concussions are a concern, right?
How
concerned are you?
Sure.
I mean, how many concussions has he had? I forgot the number.
I believe it was diagnosed or documented as 6, which in NFL parlance means that it's 10 plus.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I'm not even exaggerating that. Like, I just did an interview last week with Lofoot Tutupu. I believe he said he had 15 and that they were diagnosed with 7 or 8. It's just those guys spend so much time until the last 5 years or so where it's become just very, very much more accepted to not tough it out and play through and the nonsense like that. Those guys hid those things all the time before. Right. So if he's had 5 or 6 diagnosed ones,
it's like Troy Aikman had 7 in one. There was 5 years or something like that.
Oh man. Oh,
I think you can't, to your point, Eric, you can't overstate the dangerous nature of concussions, especially as a person who's a Buffalo person growing up with Bills and Sabres. I think of Pat LaFontaine and his concussions, even Eric Lindros, who I hated, and seeing what concussions did to his game. And then when you take the football aspect, to Greg's point, it really was, you get knocked in the head and it was, kind of whatever, you go back on the field, but you saw the repercussions.
You got your bell rung.
Exactly. And you just, get some smelling salts and go back out on the field. But we see the long-term damage, and I'm also CTE and the damage, and I'm also a pro wrestling fan. I'll divulge that about myself, and seeing what Chris Benoit's brain looked like when they examined it, and he had the brain of a 70-year-old, and it was gray mush from all the diving headbutts he was doing and just the concussions that he had that he didn't report, or he just shook it off because, you're not wrestling again for another couple nights. You'll be okay. It's nothing to sneeze at or joke around with. It's something that needs to be treated seriously, especially for the offensive line. You're not going to not get hit in your head. Yeah. It's impossible.
Right.
And I'll say the fact that he was cleared of the concussion protocol and was in an NFL uniform in all intents and purposes available to play, I'm going to say I don't believe this is the case. But if after that diagnosed concussion, the 6th one and however many he's actually had, and all the stories about the care that he provides for his handicapped brother, all of the things in his life and the concern that his wife had when he went through those challenges before signing, if it came out that he decided to retire, no one could have been upset. No one could have judged him for that. No one could have, disappointment is fair. It would have been disappointing because he's a great player, but everyone would have understood. So I'm hopeful the fact that he cleared concussion protocol and was in an NFL uniform available to go into a game, I'm going to assume that's not the case, but I'd be lying if I didn't have a moment where I said, oh God, I hope we see him again. I thought that for a moment.
And especially with concussions, that's one of those injuries, when you separate your shoulder, you're more susceptible to shoulder separations going forward. And once you get your first concussion, you are more susceptible to concussions going forward, let alone having 6 official, which probably to the point that we've all made here is most likely easily in the double digits. and like the low to mid teens, like it's a dangerous reality. And yeah, if he makes that decision to retire, it sucks, but he's got to take care of himself and his family. And there's no harm there.
To Mitch Morse's own defense, he has said in the media in the past that he listens to the doctors, and the doctors say it's not something innate with him that's like, he's more susceptible to concussions or anything like that. It's just the nature of the game, as we're all talking about here. So he's willing to trust his doctors and say, I'm not going to retire unless they tell me there's something severely going on here, and then maybe I'll consider it. But this is just a consequence of what I do. So hopefully he can stay healthy moving forward. Hopefully he's the guy. I want to see that full, healthy offensive line that we haven't seen all year at all because of the injury to Feliciano and then Morris and all these guys going down. Ford, who hopefully will be coming back after the bye as well. So we'll see. That line has to come together for this team to continue to do what it does. We've already gone on for an hour and 20 minutes. 4 guys here. We're doing a hell of a show here. Man. Yeah, it's been a great show. I do want to run through one last time, give the fans a chance. The people in the chat, thank you for sticking with us for this long. I brought it up earlier in the show. The rest of the Bills' schedule moving forward, I think we could win every single one of these games. No doubt about it. Now, is that going to happen? Is that likely to happen? Probably not, because that's a hell of a run to go on. But could it happen? Yes. So what I want to know is there a team on the schedule that you're most afraid of going forward? And what do you think the Bills' record is over these last 6 games that we have? 6-0, that'd be a hell of a record. Finishing the year 13-3. That's not bad at all. So I take that. My prediction preseason was 12-4. I think that's still realistic. I think there's a factor of how these games work out. We just lost a heartbreaking game. We're due to win one. So what do you guys think going forward?
I'll lead off here. Go ahead, Eric.
I think they could get to 11 wins. I think you drop 2 more of these. LA at home, I think, is a huge advantage. But these primetime games, like teams give their best effort on primetime, right? Especially a team like San Francisco who really has nothing to play for but pride. That division is crazy. The Steelers, I don't know, but I think the Bills could win that game, to be honest with you. But really, New England is the most scary game for me because I'm not sure where Miami's going to be at. I don't expect them to really compete for the division in the last week. But that New England loss on Monday night, it could start to hinder some momentum moving into the playoffs. And so that worries me the most. Bill's going to bring it after, losing in Buffalo for seems like his first time ever.
To your point, Eric, the Bills are 7-0 on 1:00 Sunday games, and we don't have a lot of 1:00 Sunday games moving forward here. So we got a lot of primetime games that we're going to have to show we can win during that time slot, right? Especially on these Monday night games. We have 2 Monday night games, San Francisco and New England, as you brought up. San Francisco, depending on where their health situation is, will probably be favorite to win that game. But the New England game in New England, that's the prove-it game, right? That's where if they're stumbling down the stretch, if they're playing well down the stretch, we have to beat them. It doesn't matter. That's the must-win on the schedule for me, really.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to say I think they're going to go 4-2. I think that they're going to win one of the games that people are predicting them to lose, like the Steelers, the Bills, the Patriots, and that they're going to drop one that we don't expect, potentially because Week 17 doesn't matter. So I would say 5-1 if it's for the division, 4-2 if we have it wrapped up, because I think 4-2 will wrap it up. So I think we'll be 4-1 at that point and be 11-4 going into the final game, and that if it mattered, we'd win to go 12-4. I don't think it's going to matter, and I think it is going to matter for Miami, and that they're going to beat Matt Barkley and our backups, and we're going to end up going 11-5 because Week 17 didn't matter. I do think the fact that the 2 toughest games, the Steelers and the Miami game, are both at home. All the other, the games that are more winnable are on the road. I like that split. Obviously that San Francisco game is much less concerning than it was coming into the year. I mean, anything is just like playing. You can't taking a Belichick game for granted. You can't take a Kyle Shanahan game for granted because he is the best run game coordinator in NFL history, possibly. And that's our weakness. So if he gets Raheem Mostert back healthy and they have something going, we can't take that game for granted. So, I think that we probably drop one we shouldn't, but that we win 4 or 5 out of them, depending on whether week 17 matters.
Yeah, and you brought up week 17, and somebody just commented here, Jason, I wanted to bring this one up.
No.
My preseason prediction, my bold preseason prediction was that the week 17 game would not matter, and Jake Fromm would get his first start in that game. Now that's looking less likely because he's away from the team and all that for the COVID security reason. Maybe
sure it's COVID.
For that,
sure it's COVID security.
Yeah, right.
It's not because the whole locker room hates him. It's for sure not.
No, definitely not.
But hey,
Mackenzie over Fromm.
No. Oh, Mackenzie over Fromm. Hashtag Mackenzie over Fromm.
Emergency quarterback week 17.
Hashtag Silver Linings.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that week 17 game. We'll see if it could come down to that. If we win 5 in a row, and then there's only that game, and we're already at 12 wins, that game probably doesn't matter for the Bills, regardless. So
if they win 5 straight to get to 5 and 12 and 3, I almost think mathematically it can't matter because we already have all of the tiebreakers on Miami. So if we won 5 straight, it would be over. They could not pass us for the division.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting stretch for sure. The game like the Chargers, they could come out strong against us. Luckily, we're playing them after a bye, so we have lots of time to prepare for them. We have a bad taste in our mouth. I feel like they're going to come out at 100% and giving it all they got in that game, even though they need to do that for every game, including these, tough games coming up against Pittsburgh and San Fran. But any last thoughts on the Bills' record or, going down the stretch, what you want to see record-wise or what's your expectation at this point?
I'm thinking, I can't think along the same lines that we've discussed, and Greg stole my thunder a little bit, you horrible person. I think that the Miami game is super intriguing to see what it looks like is Miami fighting for a playoff spot? Are we fighting for playoff positioning and seeding, or is everything done and dusted and it doesn't matter and we sit guys? I think that's the biggest determinant in whether or not we go 5-1 or 4-2. My eyes are fixated on the Steelers game and the Patriots game. I think we should take care of business against the Chargers. I think the 49ers still a threat. I'm not taking any of these games lightly, but much to everyone's point, the injuries are they're just so much at this point. Kittle's still going to be out. Garoppolo's still going to be out. Maybe Mostert's back. Richard Sherman should be back. So they'll get some pieces, but they're so banged up everywhere. I think we can get the job done there. I think we can get the job done against anyone left on this schedule. But that Pittsburgh game is going to be really, really interesting. I want to see what the Bills defense looks like against the Steeler offense, which has been good, but not really great. And then what does the Bills offense look like against the defense that everybody kind of thinks is into the top 1 or 2 units of the league? And despite the fact that the Pats are not looking good, I'm not counting an easy win on prime time against the Belichick team in Foxborough. But those are my 2 biggest games that I'm circling and viewing. How do we come out in those games? But based on what we do and how the season wraps up for other teams in the conference, I think you're realistically looking at 4-2 and 5-1, and either one of those, knock on wood, should get the division wrapped up, and then the Bills with the AFC East.
You brought up 2 great points that I want to harp on ending the show here, because I think these are 2 great notes to end on. This team has not reached its peak yet, right? The offense has been all that and more in terms of the passing game. Josh Allen has exceeded expectations of most people coming into this season and is certainly put himself in the MVP conversation for this team, which it was unexpected for a lot of people coming in, although some of us did say it could happen. But this offense, now that the offensive line, if the offensive line can get healthy, the run game has been non-existent for the most part. If we can get that run game going on top of this pass game, and that offensive line is holding stronger for Josh Allen, this offense is going to take another jump forward. If the defense can start playing like the defense we know, if Matt Milano comes back and all of a sudden there's not this big hole in both the run game and over the middle passing, with Matt Milano there, that could bring this whole defense together to play again to another level. Not even as elite as they were the past 2 seasons, but just bringing it up another notch. That would make us the favorite to beat almost every team at that point. So certainly going forward, those are 2 things I am most optimistic about. Wow, we've already gone on for almost an hour and a half. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we call it a night?
Mackenzie over Fromm.
Mackenzie over Fromm, week 17.
And starting corner, right?
Oh, and corner. Yeah, there it is. I forgot about the corner.
There are no
double-sided player, baby. Yeah.
Mackenzie for punter.
Oh God, he could probably punt it further than 10
Don't
yards.
get him started again.
Yeah, true.
Sorry, I apologize.
Anybody could kick it further than that.
I am ready for Tyler Bass to punt.
Ooh.
Oh, that would be, we'll see. Hey, he's
Give me
got the
something.
legs
Dual
for it,
kicker.
right? All right,
this
gentlemen.
is a lot of fun, guys. Appreciate you coming in. Prayers out to Sterling. Obviously, hoping for the best for him. Scary times. Ask everybody, please be safe, be careful. Social distance, wear your mask, be a grown adult. Help us out.
Especially during this holiday season. I know it's going to be tough, but make those right decisions, please, for your own health and safety and all of those around you. It's going to be tough, but do the right thing. I want to remind you guys all, we're all from the Cover One Network here. Eric and I from the Hoof podcast, live on Tuesday nights. We have the recorded podcast that drops on Friday. Greg and Anthony, you want to give your little spiel quick before we end?
Absolutely. Come find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson, doing preview shows every Wednesday and post-game shows right after each game live with Aaron Quinn. This week we have some big picture topics to talk about going into the off season and into the rest of the year. So come and check us out.
I'm Anthony. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ ANT. Give me a follow on Twitter, whether deed to your house or a blood oath, any type of anything that's all equal. And I'm more than just a pretty face. I am the host of Disguise Coverage on the Cover One Sports Network, live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. on YouTube and all the podcasting apps and platforms that everything from Cover One can be found on. And I want to thank you guys for putting this awesome super show together. It's sad that Sterling couldn't be here. We wish him the best, but this was a great time. I had a great time.
Same.
Thank you guys for filling in and with us. Yeah, definitely. We gotta make this a quarterly thing or something. Put the whole show together.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. We're with the Cover One Network. You got all of us there. I honestly think we bring some of the best content that's out there. There's a lot of great Bills content out there, but Cover One Network is where it's at. Follow us all. Listen to this podcast. Tune in for the live shows. You won't be disappointed, I promise. All right, everybody. Thanks. And as always, go Bills.